what if Tank Davis, who can punch, who is a hell of a fighter, who is the top 10 pound-for-pound fighter, what if he lands a punch on this bigger guy's chin, right, who's not a professional fighter? What happens?
But if they do it for real, Tank is highly capable of taking Jake Paul out. So the exhibitions that I like to see are ones that either I can mythically look at and say, wow, well, if he would have did that back when he was 10 years younger or 8 years or 12 years ago, he would have beat him. You understand me? Because we know boxing.
Which if he hits you because he's so accurate, he's gonna drop you or put you to sleep. But like not necessarily power punch. Like Edwin De Los Santos is a hard hitter. He would even have a hard time with rollies. I'm not even kidding.
Boxing legends across the board have weighed in on the potential outcome of the upcoming Gervonta Tank Davis versus Jake Paul matchup, and many of them believe it won't even last 3 rounds. Renowned boxing journalist Gareth A. Davis was among the first to break down the psychology behind the fight. He pointed out that during the press conference and face-off, Tank barely spoke. He stayed calm, quiet, and composed, even as Jake hurled his usual barrage of taunts about Tank's size and height. To Gareth, that silence said everything. He described Davis's demeanor as cold restraint, the kind that hides a storm. While some took his lack of emotion as hesitation or disinterest, Gareth insists that once the bell rings, all that bottled energy will explode into violent precision. He predicts that Davis will unleash blistering combinations early, overwhelming Jake before he even settles into rhythm. In Gareth's words, when Tank stops being silent, he starts ending fights.
Went about presser.
He reminded me of a northern football fan being dragged to a shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon rather than being allowed to go to his favourite Liverpool seat. You'll relate to that, won't you? It was almost like he'd been shackled and dragged there against his will. Even when they faced off, it was as if Jake Paul had a bad smell about him or something. He didn't want to get near Jake Paul. He didn't want to. Just going to plug this in as well. I just realised it's not plugged in. It was almost as if he didn't want to indulge anyone at all. Like he'd signed up against his will, and then like he'd been signed up against his will. The agents and his manager and his handler had dragged him there without briefing him on what was going on and where it would be and what time it would take place. And there was this oaf in his mind standing there in front of him, this big oaf who kept posturing, and it just didn't do anything to him. I wondered at one point whether he was going to burst out with a combination of punches or something and just drop Jake Paul, who was being, measuring him up and going down to his height, and it was all very peculiar in my view. Like he really wasn't taking it seriously.
Meanwhile, Ryan Garcia has made his feelings about the matchup clear, and he's furious. Garcia, who has shared the ring with Tank and understands his power firsthand, called the fight an insult to boxing. He didn't hold back, labeling it a mockery of fairness and competition. According to Ryan, the matchup isn't about skill or legacy, it's about marketing, money, and viral attention. He condemned the huge gap in size and weight between the two fighters, pointing out that Tank's natural division is lightweight, while Jake Paul is practically a cruiserweight. To him, that alone disqualifies it from being considered a real contest. "This isn't boxing," Ryan said. "It's business disguised as sport." He warned that the fight sends a dangerous message to young fighters that hype, not hard work, is the new path to success. Garcia emphasized that the sport he loves is being twisted into spectacle, and that this particular matchup represents everything wrong with boxing's new era of social media-driven chaos.
Mainly Jake's, and we're not falling for the Disney Channel bit no more. We're not falling for "you're not a fighter" no more. We're not falling for that. You're ranked as a cruiserweight and you're out here trying to fight a lightweight. And then on top of it, you were just talking about fighting Anthony Joshua. That doesn't make no sense. And I just felt like it was a disgrace to boxing, and kind of it was not a good move by Jake Paul. I understand people saying, Gervonta got to go get his money, blah, blah, blah. But, we're not talking about that shit. We're talking about the sport, bro. We're not talking about, You got to get that money, bro. Yeah, but everybody's open to criticism. That's the whole point of this media shit. That's why they talk about basketball players. They don't talk about, well, LeBron's making too much. Like, nobody cares, bro. If LeBron's missing the shot, he's missing the fucking shot. So at the end of the day, bro, I just thought it was a disgrace to the sport. Because on one end, you know, you got the casuals, right? The casuals don't see the weight difference. They see Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Yeah. And if Gervonta Davis doesn't fuck up Jake Paul, they're going to think Jake Paul is some pound-for-pound champion type of fighter. Yeah. And to me, that's just, it's tricking the public, and it's kind of bullshit, bro, at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, if Gervonta was Jake Paul's size, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There probably wouldn't even be a fight. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I just think that it's a disgrace to boxing.
Well, we got to play devil's advocate because people were saying, well, Ryan, you called out Jake Paul before too, so how would you say that? What do you have to say to the people that were saying that?
Well, I'm way bigger than Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis is 5'4", and his last fight was at 133. My last fight was 147. I walk around 170. So, I mean, 170 to 190, whatever, you know, however big is not too much difference. But you got Gervonta Davis, he's actually really small. Like, when I fought him, he's small. Yeah. So I just think it's a very unfair fight. Nobody was complaining when Jake Paul was fighting Julio Cesar Chavez. Right. Nobody was complaining when he's fighting Anthony Joshua. And I still think Jake Paul's a cool dude. But shit, he's calling me out on my shit. I'm gonna call him out on his shit, bro. That's a fucking disgrace of a fight. Yeah. You know it. Just like Mike Tyson, low-key was a disgrace, but we accepted it. But he was 60 years old. I mean, right. What the f we talking about here?
That's great.
Veteran world champion Shawn Porter added a more philosophical perspective. Looking at the matchup through the lens of experience, Porter described it as a symbol of boxing's changing values. Back in our day, he said, fighters risked everything, their health, their record, their pride, for legacy. But now, Porter believes many boxers chase fast paychecks and brand deals instead of greatness. In his eyes, Gervonta Davis joining the exhibition trend is a major disappointment. Porter made it clear that he respects Tank's immense talent, few possess his timing, explosiveness, and ring IQ, but feels that he's wasting it on sideshow fights rather than historic rivalries. Porter called this the TikTok generation of boxing, where popularity and spectacle outweigh the grind and discipline that built the sport's legends. His criticism isn't aimed solely at Davis, it's directed at the system that rewards marketing over mastery.
How you doing? How do you sort of see this scenario now for him?
Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it, what to really say about it. I've only been asked this when it's presented to me. That's when I think about it, and I can't really come up with a good answer for it. In a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense to me. Of course, we know the size differential, and the list goes on from there. I don't know, man. I think we're entering a generation now, or a phase now where fighters, I don't know if it's fighters, I don't know if he doesn't care about the legacy, or if he feels like this fight doesn't matter, I'll get back to the legacy. I just don't know. This is truly it's not a legacy fight, but of course it is a generational money fight, so.
A growing number of analysts echo Porter's concerns, blaming not just fighters, but the audience. They argue that the modern fan base has fueled this circus-like environment. Technical, high-level matchups between elite fighters barely draw attention anymore, while influencer fights and celebrity exhibitions dominate headlines. They blame social media's short attention span for shifting the sport's focus away from depth and toward drama. The Jake Paul phenomenon, they say, is not a fluke, it's a reflection of what fans now demand. The analysts argue that when fans reward trash talk and chaos with pay-per-view sales, they give promoters every reason to keep feeding the spectacle. The line between professional boxing and entertainment has blurred. Real champions fight for belts, influencers fight for clicks. As long as the audience continues to buy into controversy, the industry will continue to prioritize spectacle over sport.
Has evolved to where it's at. I'll expand on that. For one, you have good fights where I'm not talking about these type of fights, crossover type of fight, former Disney guy, influencer stuff, not. And Jake Paul has really promoted himself and acquitted himself to the point where he's kind of a boxer. Now, he hasn't fought the top names, I get it, blah, blah, blah. But He's doing his thing. He's training like a boxer. He's not like taking it lightly, like streaming and then working on his YouTube more than he's working on his boxing. It is what it is, right? But beyond that, let's keep it going. I told you I'm about to really get unpacked. Subscribe to the channel. The reality is, the reason why I'm saying I blame you, the fans, is because we've had some very good fights, like David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, whatever. I'm talking in the last 5-10 years, right? Very good fights, all boxing. So not talking influencer or any type of crossover fight, right? Good fights, and then you got boxing fans in a niche sport who didn't further the exposure by advertising or buying the fight, mostly buying the fight with piracy and whatnot. So now we're at a point in this society where these companies, they're like, all right, they see the piracy is a problem. Now they're looking for sure shot, must win type of scenarios. That's why we're getting these fights that some people, purists and diehards, are calling wonky fights. You know what I mean? It is your fault.
Another major topic among insiders is the physical danger of the fight itself. The size difference between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis is staggering. Jake walks around at cruiserweight roughly 190 to 200 pounds, while Davis's natural fighting weight is 135. Even if Davis is the far more skilled boxer, experts warn that physics matter. Reach, mass, and power play roles that skill alone can't always overcome. They caution that putting Tank in the ring with someone that much bigger could be both unfair and unsafe. Jake has taken punches from naturally larger opponents and stayed standing, while Tank, though known for his knockout power, would have to navigate through a much taller, stronger frame just to land effectively. Critics argue that a matchup like this would never be sanctioned under normal boxing regulations. On paper, it's Jake's size versus Tank's speed and precision, but the imbalance makes it controversial from every angle. For purists, this is just more proof that boxing's rules are being bent to suit entertainment, not integrity.
How do I even start to break down a Tank Davis versus Jake Paul fight? Tank, you know, a massively powerful fighter at 135 pounds, but his punch output is among the lowest in the sport. Jake has a pretty decent punch output for a guy that's 200 pounds. He hits hard in his own right, but doesn't have the skill and capabilities anywhere close, or the feet, or the hand speed, or the eyes anywhere close to Tank Davis, but has a power that Tank Davis has probably never felt, but just because Jake is naturally 70 pounds bigger than him, right? So 10 rounds, 3 minutes, who starts to show the wear and tear first? I know if Tank touches him on the jaw, it's probably not going to feel like roses, regardless if he's 135 or 150 or whatever he steps in that night. He's still a Tank and has still put guys down as he's gone up in weight, but Jake is just so much bigger. How much will the power that Tank has at the lower weight classes affect?
Respected commentator Showbiz the Adult took a closer look at the implications for Davis's legacy. He said Tank's career, while impressive, has long been shadowed by questions about whether he avoids truly dangerous fights. Now, with the Jake Paul exhibition, Showbiz believes Tank's credibility could take a serious hit. He compared it to Lamont Rocha's recent performance against Pitbull Cruz, one of Tank's toughest past opponents. Rocha's success, he argued, highlights just how competitive Tank's division still is. If Roach can perform better against a man Tank once struggled with, fans will inevitably start questioning who the real top dog is. Boxing is a business of perception, Showbiz said. And perception can destroy a career faster than a knockout. In his view, fighting Jake Paul does nothing to build Tank's resume, it only gives critics more ammunition to question his hunger for true greatness.
He's better than Tank. I don't even know how you cannot have him better than Tank. People question Tank's resume anyway. But if you make Tank take a knee and they don't call it a knockdown and you still get the draw, you beat him. You beat Tank. And then you dominate Pitbull, one of Tank's best wins. Bro, you better than him. The resume, listen, bro. I didn't say greater, I said better. The resume means politics. Ryan was just saying it. Lamont Roach could have been on a back burner and they were holding him back, so he had to go down to 130. Doing the grunt work like Marvelous Marvin Hagler. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130. 130 doing the grunt work like Marvelous Marvin Hagler. waiting for his time to shine. Resume, if the business chooses you, they can move you along right. He actually get cherry picked, and he best Tank, and then he stops Pitbull. He's better. Y'all know how the business of boxing works. You just saw Terrence Crawford actually be the best fighter we've seen in decades. The man, Terrence Crawford, can arguably be better than Floyd Mayweather. Y'all saw the business shitting for all of his career, practically all of his career. And you see that he's better than Nello? What a surprise! We've been sitting, a guy coming from lightweight can beat Nello at super middleweight.
Lamont Roach himself stepped in to reveal what many didn't know, the business drama behind the fight. According to Roach, Davis was contractually lined up for a legitimate rematch with another top contender, a fight that could have silenced critics and solidified his dominance. Instead, Tank chose to pursue the Jake Paul bout, drawn by the massive payday. Roach didn't sugarcoat it, he called it a sellout move. He argued that true fighters honor their contracts and their word, because boxing's integrity depends on it. Roach acknowledged Tank's skill and killer instinct but said this decision makes people question his discipline and commitment to legacy. Many fans, Roach added, feel betrayed believing that Tank abandoned a real test for a marketing stunt.
He did, even if this whole Jake situation was in the way. Holler at me. Tell me you want to fight Jake. Tell me you got a bag coming up. All right, boom. Like it's a way to handle that. We have a contract. You cannot breach a contract and think shit just gonna be sweet. You can't. You can't do that. Right. We have a contract. So it's not like this wasn't supposed to happen or whatever the case may be. He just went and took the Jake route. We had a signed contract to fight. So him breaching the contract is, if y'all put yourself in my shoes, you gotta think, I'm looking forward to fighting and getting paid. I'm looking forward to fighting and winning so I could be two-time world champ. Me. I'm in training for a fight to be a champion in another weight class and for me to be crowned champion twice in my career. And this just go ghost and then end up announcing another fight. Put yourself in my shoes.
Did you find out just like the rest of us did?
Kinda. So I was on the fence because they didn't announce. They was like, all right, we're gonna announce. All right, we're gonna announce. All right, they're gonna announce. Every week. All right, we're gonna announce the fight. I'm like, all right, they on the bullshit.
Veteran analyst Max Kellerman offered a more balanced take. He admitted that while Tank's choice may frustrate traditionalists, it also highlights the business genius of Jake Paul. In Kellerman's words, no one in boxing today sells tickets like Jake Paul. He's a marketing powerhouse who has managed to do what few promoters can, make boxing go viral again. That's why elite fighters, even world champions, keep accepting his challenges. Not because they respect his boxing credentials, but because they can't ignore his reach. Kellerman, joined by Paulie Malignaggi, debated whether Tank's knockout power could carry against someone Jake's size. Both agreed that Tank's explosiveness is extraordinary, but doubted whether it would have the same effect on a man nearly 60 pounds heavier. Kellerman concluded that while Tank might still win, the fight symbolizes the uneasy marriage between sport and spectacle, a dynamic that defines this new boxing era.
Legitimately cannot get knockouts. I agree, he can punch, but there's a lot of limited knockout artists, though, man.
He's one of the least active punchers in the game with the highest knockout percentage of current heavyweight.
But if he was a real knockout artist, if he was a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best of the best. Felix Trinidad was a knockout artist. He was knocking out the best of the best. If you're a real knockout artist, prop him up against the best and show us how he smokes them. But the way we did when Felix Trinidad was doing it. You know, the way they did when Mike Tyson was doing it in his prime. Okay, say what you want about the Mike Tyson era. He knocked out everyone from 1986 to 1989. Everyone got knocked out. Everyone.
Well, by your standard, you could say that Tyson was to a degree manufactured.
No,
and
because
Teddy
he
Atlas
fought
100%,
everyone that was there. Everyone that was there at
Teddy
that time
Atlas,
fought.
Teddy Atlas will 100% agree with this
with the
because
expense
he
of
would say the guys
Witherspoon.
that were afraid of
With
him.
the exception of Witherspoon. No, but they all doesn't matter. He knocked them all out. There was nobody you could say in that era except maybe Witherspoon, who had contract.
You can say the same thing about
who had contract issues with King at the time. Oh, except for Witherspoon, there is nobody Tyson didn't fight in that era. He knocked them all out.
Comedian and commentator Eddie Griffin closed the discussion with a blunt, cynical take. He believes Jake Paul's fights are not true competitions at all, they're performances designed for profit. These are Hollywood fights, he said, not boxing matches. Griffin suggested that outcomes in such exhibitions are often influenced by business interests rather than pure sportsmanship. He even referenced the Mike Tyson exhibition fight, claiming that Tyson could have ended it early but didn't because that wasn't part of the plan. Griffin speculated that the same formula might apply to the Davis-Paul showdown. If Tank knocks Jake out too quickly, the hype dies. If Jake survives, the money doubles. According to him, both camps understand that the real fight isn't in the ring, it's for viewership and financial leverage. Still, he admitted, no matter how scripted or outrageous it feels, fans will always tune in. Because in modern boxing, controversy doesn't ruin business, it drives it.
I ain't even gonna call it a fight, because it ain't. If Jake Paul's involved in it, it's a great acting job, you know. You know Mike Tyson could have just knocked Jake Paul's face into the canvas, but he got paid to pull punches, otherwise he wouldn't have got paid. Pretty sure the same is going for Gervonta Davis. It's a quick money grab. And most of y'all gonna be suckers who tune in. It's just quick money grab. That's all I'm saying. Ain't gonna be no fight. I don't give a fuck how big Jake Paul is. He can't take one of them little mother tank punches. And tank move furniture. Move furniture. Catch that motherfucking move furniture. And Jake don't like his furniture moves, so he gonna pay him not to hit him again. If you really want to show out Gervonta, sign the contract that you ain't gonna hit him, because if you hit him, you lose all the money. And then whoop that motherfucker's ass, put him to sleep, and get him out the boxing game once and for all. Let's go over here.
And that's where today's story ends, at the uneasy intersection of legacy, money, and entertainment. The question remains, is this fight the future of boxing or the sign of its downfall? For now, all anyone can do is wait for the bell when talk ends, lights dim, and the truth, whatever it is, unfolds under the bright glare of the ring. Stay tuned, this is only the beginning.